What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Kickash Podcast. We are back here today to discuss the Elimination Chamber and to see the road to WrestleMania and to kind of discuss a brief roadmap on the Rock appearances that we'll be getting within the next few weeks, which is actually pretty surprising in my opinion. So we'll go over that briefly here later on as well. But first, thank you guys so much for checking out the show here. I appreciate you listening, watching, streaming, whatever you're doing. I appreciate that. And if you want to leave any feedback, you can always drop a comment either here on YouTube if you're streaming the video there, or if you're listening, or you can just leave any feedback on Twitter at Kickash Podcast underscore or at ASHMANNS. But we're not going to waste much time. I definitely want to get into the card because it was like I said, a very good show, and the energy was there, and the setting and the area, the camera shots that they got of the stadium there with the backdrop of the city, and when the sun started to set, it was just beautiful. And I personally had never seen that stadium myself, so it was beautiful, and I hope they end up going back there relatively soon or make it if I don't think they'll be able to do an annual event from what I heard. Just to get the chamber structure itself over there was a nightmare. So I don't know if they'll make it an annual event. And even if they do, if they don't obviously have to make it the Elimination Chamber, if it was that difficult, they can switch it to a different PLE that they have very easily. So if it was that beneficial for them and the city was that welcoming and it was mutually beneficial for both, I don't see why they couldn't make it a more frequent thing and maybe just throughout the country of Australia as well. So that would be pretty cool to see. But I think that the fans there too brought a different type of energy, which was very, very fun. And I just love these international shows, man. Between this one, the Puerto Rico one, the UK, it's just I'm happy that WWE is going broader more frequently now. I was a little leery when I believe it was Nick Khan, most likely Nick Khan, had gone on either I mentioned it in a conference call or said it in an interview somewhere that they were going to try to book more stadium shows for more of the PLEs throughout the year instead of just like WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, and SummerSlam and things like that. And it's working out. It makes the PLE itself feel bigger. The Elimination Chamber you should just be one of those shows where it's like, why did we need a pay-per-view PLE just for the Elimination Chamber or around the Elimination Chamber idea itself, right? Um, and that was kind of the time when the Hell in a Cell PLEs, pay-per-views were more common and stuff like that too. And it was more, I don't want to say gimmick shows, but the show itself was more the priority, the PLE name itself, you know what I mean? And not the stories going into the show, and the show just so happens to be there type thing. So with that being said, I really enjoyed the Australia atmosphere and just the different setting. And like I said, the backdrops that they got were beautiful, and the shots that they got were just so well done. So shout out to the new producer and the new production team. I'm not obviously sure if they have a whole new team, but obviously with the recent changes with Kevin Dunn stepping down and stuff like that, they have a new producer in charge. So you can see little things like that coming aboard. And I don't know if that's more so just a combination of things, especially with the merger of, UFC and the sports like atmosphere and stuff like that, and that new era that Triple H was talking about that they wanted to kind of gear towards. But I just like things like that and little things that they're doing, even like I've said last time, I think it was with the Rumble review, with the shots that they're doing with the talent arriving to the show, right? And earlier in the afternoon, like when they're getting off their bus or getting out the limo, driving up to the stadium, arena, wherever they're at. I just dig it. I think it's cool, and it's a small thing, and you're gonna be feeling that time anyway, so you might as well do something fun and switch things up. Because I don't know why they always felt like they had to stick to a formula. I guess it makes sense and it's easier, right? Especially with the chaotic nature of everything, I'm sure. But I don't know. To me, it just I like the change, and I think it's a lot of small changes that are end up being pretty big and really beneficial to all of us in the long term. But with all that BS out of the way, we'll get into the actual PLE, the Elimination Chamber card. They did end up adding a match to the pre-show rather, with that being the women's tag team titles on the line, which is actually a pretty cool addition. I was pulling up the report here, and shout out to prowrestling.net for the transcription and the rundown of the card. Appreciate you guys over there. But champions for the women's division, Asuka and Kairi off against Indy Hartwell, the hometown girl, and Candice LeRae. I did not actually see that. I didn't even realize, first of all, that they got added to the pre-show. And to be honest with you guys, at that point when I woke up at 5, I had or 4:30. First alarm went off at 4:30, second alarm went up at 4:45. And then I crawled to the living room. I had slept for like maybe like 2.5, 3 hours, I think, at that point. So I just I'll go back and possibly watch it because per Jason's report, it was a pretty good match here. But I think the big thing with that was just getting Indy added to the card, right? And getting her a match in her hometown, which was cool. And if I didn't speak on it with the last show, in regards to Bronson Reed, he did send out an updated tweet that him and his wife actually did end up having their child. I don't know if it was the day of the PLE or if it was the day before. So that's cool. Things happen for a reason. Sometimes we don't see it at first, but then we end up seeing it or whatever the case may be. I'm just happy for him, and it sounded by the tone of his tweet that everything was good. So congrats to them, and that's cool. It's cool to see that wrestlers are being able to be home and be present for shit like that in their family now, right? Where before, back in the day, we would hear so many stories of them missing like the key moments in their family's lives. You know what I mean? So shout out to him and the fact that he was able to be there for that. But anyway, moving on to the main card again itself, back to that. We opened up with the women's Elimination Chamber match, that of course containing Becky Lynch, Bianca Belair, Liv Morgan, Tiffany Stratton, Naomi, and Raquel Rodriguez, who we found out later on, I think maybe a day or two afterwards, that I forget the condition that she's dealing with, but it flared up again. So she was having some health and medical issues. So shout out to her for still going out there and putting on a good performance. You know what I mean? I'm sure, very easily could have backed out if she needed to. If she told the staff, like, look, this is going on. I need time. I'm sure they would have found a way in a replacement, but she stuck through it, and went on with the match. So shout out to her. You know what I mean? That's everyone. It sucks because a lot of times people will just make assumptions right off the bat and just take something at face value and just comment on it. And I'm guilty of that shit too. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not anything perfect over here, but it's just a good reality check too, and a good reminder to always make sure that try to make sure that you don't judge people before you know what's going on, their story. You know what I mean? So shout out to her, and I'm glad that she was able to go out there and make it all the way to Australia. I think she ended up saying that it started flaring up on the flight there, so rough, rough. So shout out to her. But the star of the match was no doubt Tiffany Stratton. I think this was just a phenomenal performance for her. I think it could have gone one or two ways, right? I think they could have very easily have had her be the stereotypical blonde hair girl wrestler. You know what I mean? Blonde hair female wrestler where she doesn't want to get hit, or she's not into like that type of match and that type of physicality, or just stuff like that, but she went out there and she owned that match. Obviously, the in my opinion, the moment of the match was when she was on the pod. I forget which pod it was. I think in like the front right corner, when you're looking at it straight on, but she hit the most beautiful senton swanton bomb I think you could have in that situation, but then where the women were positioned and where her pod was, I think it was just great. And I think, especially with this being her first, besides the Rumble, her first big show. And it's different in the sense because the Rumble, it's obviously a battle royal, right? So there's a lot of people in the ring, there's a lot going on. It's not as focused on you. And yes, this is still a multi-person match, but moments like that, obviously the moment in the spotlight is on you. So I think the whole match she delivered, and I think it was most evident when she got pinned by Liv Morgan and the fans chanted bullshit, and they were upset that Liv Morgan pinned Tiffany Stratton and eliminated her from the chamber. And I love that Liv played it up too. She did the crybaby mocking on the face. So shout out to Liv for that because she could have very easily just ignored it and kept on doing what she was doing. But that was a fun little moment there, and just playing off of the live fans, and the live crowd, and that's what's so cool about wrestling. And one of the things that I missed the most during the pandemic shows, and I mentioned the pandemic shows because I was thinking about it later, or earlier rather, when I was thinking about just like Drew and things like that, which we'll obviously talk about later. Um, but man, like, I'm just so thankful that we are, um, where we're at now in the world, and I'll just leave it at that, when it comes to all that, stuff. But moving on, the winner, I'm not gonna go detail by detail here. You guys, especially by now, have, knowledge and are well aware rather of who has won, right, and who did what in the chamber. But with this one, I was actually kind of surprised, by one thing, that Naomi was eliminated by Tiffany Stratton. I say that because I kind of expected Naomi rather to maybe last a little bit longer, especially with being on the SmackDown side of things. But I'm wondering if that's going to set up a feud going forward. Because I really think that they need to strike with Tiffany while she's hot, and not that I see her flaming out soon or anything like that. I think she's obviously just going to get better. She's literally just at the beginning. Um, but I think you wanna continue to go with her, and I think Naomi would be a perfect opponent for her and a perfect starting story, you know what I mean? And a starting point to get things going. But with that being said, the winner of the match, of course, was Becky Lynch. The final sequence rather, I love what they did. It was a quick 1-2, right? I think it was Bianca Belair. Yeah. So of course it was again Bianca who went for the KOD on Becky Lynch, but Lynch slipped through. Liv Morgan, returned and rolled up Bianca Belair and pinned her. So I was, first of all, pause right there. Talk about surprise pins. I was surprised again that Liv got the pin in the elimination on Bianca Belair. So again, with this little revenge tour that they're doing with Liv, I really like it. I dig it. She's getting little credible moments here, but she's just always so close but so far still. So I think that's just gonna add to her delusional type character. Not full blown delusional character, right? But I think just the madness in the sense of being obsessed with seeking revenge and ultimately on Rhea Ripley, right? So that's why I say Rhea Ripley's first opponent right after WrestleMania's got to be Liv, especially at this point with all the momentum, to use their word, that Liv has been building. But Belair, of course, like I said, went for the KODs. Becky Lynch slipped out of it. Morgan returned and rolled up Bianca Belair to pin her and eliminate her. But then Becky Lynch immediately hit Liv. I almost called her Lorgan. Liv Morgan with a manhandle slam, and then eliminated her to become victorious for the Elimination Chamber this year for 2024. And like I mentioned in the prediction show, the little preview, I didn't think it was going to be anything surprising, right, with Becky Lynch winning here, but I think it was the thing that they needed to do because I especially with the reaction of, and of course, right, with that Rhea Ripley got later on, and especially being in her home country, that's completely, it's to be expected. But Rhea's got something, and I think that Becky Lynch is going to be the perfect opponent for her at Mania. A lot of people were hoping that it would be Liv, just because they're tired of seeing Becky Lynch or whatever. But I think that it's perfect, and I think that that's going to be the perfect hill that Rhea needs to climb over to continue her dominant streak once we, of course, get to Mania at that point. But moving on, we had Damian Priest and Finn Balor facing off against New Catch Republic, Pete Dunne, and Tyler Bate for the WWE Undisputed Tag Team Championships. With this one, Dominic immediately stole the show at that point when he ripped the microphone away from Mike Rome when he was doing the in-ring introductions for the title match itself. And he was just booed just ridiculously. And it's so fun. It's so fun to hear that it's universal. Wherever this man goes, people hate him. And it's so refreshing. I love to see it. Dom did end up getting sent to the back later on in the match. I think it was a moment where I forget exactly what he did, but I think oh yeah, that's what it was. Shout out Jason. He had put Balor's foot under the rope, and was kind of just like bragging about him, boasting ringside, and the referee ended up seeing him, asked him if he did that, and then ended up sending him to the back. And of course, the fans were super stoked about that. But the in-ring action itself was what you would expect, right? And I think it was a really good showing for Pete and Tyler. I don't want to call them by their first names, Pete and Tyler, Bait and Dunn. But I just think I mean, the name itself is and I think it was even, gosh, was it Corey Graves who said something, I think it was him, now that I think about it. He had said, Newcastle Public sounds like something that, like a store that his wife would shop at or something like that, and when he said that, I just laughed out loud because yes, that and nothing against it, right? But it just it's gonna take some getting used to, and it's not a big deal, obviously. And to be frank, the bigger deal here is that we have Pete Dunne and a Butch. So I will go by whatever tag name they want to go by, as long as we keep Pete Dunne. But this was great. You know what I mean? Like it's just you could see the second the match was over and they were kind of doing camera shots on the guys, the last quick shots of them. You could see. I think it was on Tyler Bates' back. Like it was just brutal. I think it was Bate. I'm pretty sure it was Bates' back. It was just all like just bruised and just scraped up already. So I can imagine that was not a comfortable flight back to the States. But shout out to them. And of course, nothing surprising here. Damian Priest and Finn Balor retained their titles in about 1725 to go on to WrestleMania. And my money is still on Miz and R-Truth. Poor Miz ended up, or I'm sorry, poor Miz. Poor R-Truth ended up in Austria. He sent out a little video on Twitter. I always call it Twitter. That he ended up or that he was confused and he went to all the stadiums and well in a couple arenas over there and couldn't find anyone. And turns out he was in Austria and not Australia. So poor guy did not make it to Australia. The next segment that we had here was reading my notes here. The Waller effect. Grayson Waller, of course, is from Australia, in case you guys weren't aware. So they threw a little segment on there with him and Austin Theory and their guests of honor were none other than Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins. Theory ended up opening up the segment though and introducing a Waller who came out. There were chants. I'm not even gonna do their chant because I don't want to disrespect them because I know I will butcher it. But it's the Aussie 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 one, which is so cool to hear. You know what I mean? I wish we had something fun like that. Like we suck over here, man. But the fans loved him, of course. He ended up doing a golden shoey with a local UFC fighter, which was pretty cool. I don't know the origin and the backstory of the shoey. It seems kind of gross to me, but I'm sure if I knew the backstory and the meaning behind it, maybe I could possibly have some more love for it. But it's cool. I mean, do what you want to do. People do stuff, but I just if you know what the shoey means, and I guess I can look it up here. But if you know what the story on the shoey, let me know. I definitely appreciate that. But Seth Rollins came out and Cody Rhodes came out as well, obviously as we would hope since they were advertised for this segment. But the the monstrosity that was the prepost like it just anything you could think of the craziness that was the entrance for Cody Rhodes and the pyro that this man had was just out of this out of this world. You would have thought if this was WrestleMania and he just won the main event and he's your new undisputed heavyweight champion. Like I was just like, did I miss something? Like what are we doing here? um, but good for him and the love, of course, for Cody as well as Universal. Seth Rollins, of course, got his love and some respect there, but the star of this segment, surprisingly, even more so than Grayson Waller, was Cody Rhodes. The fans loved him, and which is again, if you're WWE, just reassuring and just a sign that hey, you're on the right track, and you just need to stick with the course, stick with the story, let him finish the damn story. We can move on, and this story will produce other stories. You know what I mean? It's not the end of the story. It's the finishing of one book and the beginning of a second. You know what I mean? The sequel. So I don't know, but that's not the hill that we're gonna be getting on here today. But long story short, guys, there was nothing really out of this world or crazy with this segment here. The main focal point and the main idea behind this was to allow Cody the opportunity to challenge The Rock to a match, anytime, anywhere. Um, I think that is very interesting, and I say that, and before I get to that, right after Cody issued that challenge to The Rock, Seth Rollins that was standing directly behind Cody Rhodes, and you could see him coming up from behind, and again just kind of inserted himself there, and it kind of stood out to me because it's like, it's not like Cody was calling The Rock and Roman Reigns out for a triple threat or a handicap match or anything like that. It was just a one-on-one match. And yes, I know like the idea is when it's a bloodline match, it's never one-on-one, even if it's on paper one-on-one. I get that, but it was very interesting though that Rollins still inserted and interjected himself into that moment, saying that you'll need a partner and you can't do it alone. So part of me wonders, is there not an ulterior motive for Seth, right? I may be crazy, but something in me wonders if Seth's brotherhood with Roman isn't stronger than his admiration and respect and his, I guess I would just say mutual respect and leave it at that at this point, because I wouldn't say that they like each other at this point or they're friends, especially with their history, of course on screen, but that Seth and Cody are friends, but the idea was the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And if this guy is going to continue his reign, you need help in numbers. You know what I mean? Because it's just you. No one. And at the end of the day, you can be as good as you can be, and you can be the best. But if you're outnumbered, you can only do so much, right? So, I think that was obviously the mindset and the direction that they were going in initially. But something in me is just wondering if Seth doesn't have, like I said, ulterior motives, and Seth's brotherhood with the Shield and with Roman Reigns isn't stronger than his want to conquer the bloodline in the story. And if you think about it, what real motive does Seth have? What Yes, Roman is still viewed as the A1 B1, he's the end game, he's the big boss, right? The final boss in WWE and in wrestling, you know what I mean? And his reign is the reign. But if you're Seth, you got a good thing going. You're the heavyweight champion on Raw. You got your own problems to worry about. You're rehabbing your knee. Roman is on his show whenever. Seth has his show. It's not like anything that has to do with Seth involves Roman directly, or if Roman's not there, it impacts Seth. It's actually better for Seth if Roman's not around. You know what I mean? Then more spotlight is on Seth, more spotlight is on the heavyweight championship, more spotlight is on what he views as the number one championship in WWE. So why is Seth really all that inclined to help Cody? Besides just because it's the right thing to do. You know what I mean? But if we know Seth and we know his story, he's the architect, right? Like he's the guy who always has a plan B. He's the guy who always has that backup plan. Or yeah, you think he's good and he's going on this side, but it's actually, I'm not gonna call it a swerve because it's not a swerve, but he's actually going a different direction. And yeah, he was the one to turn on the Shield and on the Brotherhood. I get that, but I don't know. I don't know. I think at the end of the day, and I think if you were to ask Roman's character now how he felt about Seth doing what he did to the Shield, I think he would say, of course, he didn't like it type shit, but he respects it now and he understands type shit. You know what I mean? So I I don't know. And again, I could be really off base, really out of left field on this one, but something about that last minute or so with Seth and Cody just didn't, it not that it didn't sit well with me, but it just really stood out to me and just made me really question, is Seth up to something? Does he have like a different idea and different motive here? Especially if and that was the other point with this segment as well. Seth is just a few days away from being medically cleared. So very interesting, very interesting. And also too, before we move on to the next actual match here, if we do end up getting a tag match with Seth and Cody versus Rock and Roman on night one at WrestleMania, does Seth do something to screw over Cody even more so now? So there's a lot of different routes that could go. And with that being said, I will throw in here, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, The Rock did advertise and update us on his whereabouts and what shows and SmackDowns that he will be in attendance for. So I will get that pulled up here. Bu 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 bum. But yeah, he indicated so he'll be here Friday, which is this Friday. Today is Monday. So this coming Friday, he'll be in Glendale, Arizona. So we are going yeah, we're gonna get at least 3 weeks straight of The Rock. So he's gonna be there this week, and then he announced via Instagram that he will appear on Friday Night SmackDown on March 8th in Dallas, Texas, and March 15th in Memphis, Tennessee. So shout out to Rock. I was one of those people, and I will bite the bullet and say, and I'm pretty sure I said, or if I didn't say it, I was always in the ballpark of I think he's going to be around more frequently than not. If I had to put money on it, I would say over 5 than under 5 between now and Mania. But this already, it's really dope. Like he's already guaranteeing that he's going to be at the next 3 weeks of SmackDown straight. So shout out to him. It's not like dude is just sitting around just waiting to be called. You know what I mean? Dude has a hectic fucking schedule. So say what you want about his character now, and the on-screen character and everything like that, which is the point. But he's doing it. He's putting in the work. He's making the talent. You know what I mean? So it's really cool to see. So shout out to Rocky there. But moving on and getting back to the actual card here itself, match wise at least, we had, which I was very very shocked when Michael Cole said next up we'll have the men's elimination chamber match right after these moments or whatever. I was shocked. I was like, "Wait a second, so that means Rhea's main eventing. Holy fuck." You know what I mean? Because like I said in the prediction show, I wasn't sure if they were actually gonna go forward with it, and I figured they would just stick it with the chamber opening and closing. But shout out to them. Shout out to them. And I think that's so telling because they go to a lot of people's hometowns, right? And give a lot of people matches in their hometowns, their home countries. But to put over Rhea, to have her be literally the face of this entire thing, and then to have her main event over all the chamber matches, I loved it. And yeah, I guess it made sense too with now we know who ended up winning the men's elimination chamber match not being a good guy, and possibly sending the fans home not so happy. It just made even more sense. But again, that's good booking, and that's thinking ahead, and that's just playing your cards right and just doing common sense and like the little things that mean the most. You know what I mean? So with that being said, the men's elimination chamber match was very good. I think this was probably one of the better ones that we've had. And again, though, even though the victor for this match, I think was pretty obvious as well. It was still a good fucking match, and I think that's what makes wrestling so fun, and even sports for that matter. Even if you go into a show or a match or a game, knowing that it's 9 times out of 10 most likely this person is gonna win, you go in with still, and if that entertainment value and that sport is doing what it should be doing and providing an entertaining bout, right? And even if it's just basketball, right? Even though their idea isn't to be entertaining, enter- we get entertained with their hard work and the effort that they put forward, right? And the effort in the game itself. And with wrestling, it's no different. With wrestling, obviously, it's we look for the effort, right? And the effort is just magnified times 10 with the entrances, the gear and all that stuff and the characters. Obviously the character being the most important thing. But it's just it to me that the big thing that WWE is doing well right now is making predictability fun. And I think that's so crazy to say and so crazy to think of where we're at now compared to where we were with WWE's on-screen product even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 10 years ago, even more so. Um, but with that being said, it's just a lot of the little things too with the inclusion of Logan Paul. I was in a camp that I really wanted Dom to be inserted in the match here because I think just the heat that he would have got and just the hate from the fans, it would have really added to the match. But the little things that Logan Paul was doing, right, was just it added to the match because it was just pissing Kevin Owens off even more. So Logan Paul, when he was in his pod, he was drawing little things with a Sharpie. He drew like little like horns, and at one point it was just dumb shit, right? But shit to piss Kevin Owens off. So when it was Logan Paul's time to come out of the pod, Kevin was waiting for him, and that just added to the match, and that built into the story. You know what I mean? So I think just everything that they're doing and the layout of the eliminations for this match as well was pretty telling, and I think just set themselves up for the future. We had Bobby Lashley being eliminated by Drew McIntyre, which Lashley did have an out. They went with some type of angle. I forget what it was exactly, but I'm pretty sure it was the final testament on Friday. I didn't see Smackdown on Friday. Injuring his arm, so he came in with a big brace on. Bobby Lashley did with his arm and it being wrapped up and stuff like that. But when Bobby Lashley was exiting the cage, we had a surprise entrant, and what perfect timing, and thankfully there was a delay with Bobby getting out. So AJ Styles could run in and just yeah, he brought in a chair, just pummeled LA Knight. For some reason I was like I was gonna blank there was a kendo stick, but yeah, no, it was definitely a chair. Just pummeled Knight with some chair shots. And that was interesting to me because I thought we were still going to try to go to the route with LA Knight and Logan Paul. But after the chamber, and again, another reason why I love the chamber match because it set up so many different directions that we're going to be going forward to WrestleMania. With this being one of them, I don't know if they're going to end up doing a multi-man match, which I would kind of be more in favor of. Thinking about it, it's depending on how many matches they end up having going into night one and night two, they may need to break it up. So I would get that. But I could very easily see a multi-man match on Mania being for first of all for Logan Paul's US championship, containing Kevin Owens, AJ Styles, maybe if you want to throw Lashley in there. Yeah. And obviously Logan Paul is going to be in there. That was the other guy I was thinking about. And if you want to even throw in there a Karrion Cross to add more, I was gonna say manpower, but technically, yeah, manpower in there and to get more participants in there. You could do something like that and have a multi-man match at WrestleMania for the U.S. Championship. Not saying they're most likely going to do that, but that was a thought. But if not, you have a good 3 singles matches right out of stemming out of this chamber match that WWE has going forward and that they can play around with. And I'm really intrigued. That was the other guy I was thinking about too. How can I forget the Viper, Randy Orton? And shout out to Randy Orton. The selling that he did in the chamber. I mean, bro, like it was just he had me. I really thought, oh crap, dude's injured again. Like his back is effed, and it wasn't. I mean, as far as I know, there's no major injuries coming out of any of the matches, so I'm sure they're not feeling great. You know what I mean? I'm sure they're not just over there doing cartwheels, but he just was just he's such a master of his craft. And I've loved Randy for years, man. I've always been in the Randy Orton camp. So shout out to him. But if because you obviously have to have Randy on the Mania card, you can throw him in a ladder match, which I'm sure is not what you ideally want to do to a guy who just came off of what was it, 15, 18 months being out with the back injury, right? Throw him into his first few matches back being the War Games match, the Royal Rumble, and the freaking elimination chamber. So that's not really that great if you're Randy, but it kind of not saying that Randy has to be the one jumping off of ladders and shit. You know what I mean? So it can kind of be has its pros and cons rather. Um, but yeah, like I think with this one, I think the main thing that I really enjoyed with this one, kind of looking back over my notes and then the report that Jason did here as well. Um, it was Logan Paul eliminating Randy because speaking of Randy, I really think that and what I was referencing LA Knight earlier, obviously the main idea and the thought going forward was that LA Knight was going to face Logan Paul for the US championship. And that's why I mentioned like if you still want to have LA Knight facing off for a championship, you can do a multi-man match if you want to get everyone involved. But it was really I wasn't expecting it really, and I hadn't even really thought about it. It was really interesting having Logan Paul interact with Orton the way he did, and actually hit Orton with the pair of brass knucks. You know what I mean? So I just I'm really intrigued on what they do with Paul and Orton going forward. I don't know why that saying that just sounds so strange. But at the end of the day, like I said, this match wasn't anything too crazy or anything too unpredictable rather that we saw ended up or in the outcome. And that was with Drew McIntyre winning. I think the whole story was Drew coming in and getting his moment to now head to Mania and face off against Seth. And again, if you've listened to any of the shows before, you know that I think Drew's gonna win at Mania against Seth. So we'll get into that obviously the closer we get to Mania itself. But I really enjoyed both chamber matches. I think the whole pay-per-view itself was really solid as we get into the main event here. And I'm just really happy that they went with the obvious choice with Drew and didn't change it up just to be different and just to swerve people or anything like that. I'm glad they actually went with what made the most sense. But moving on to, of course, the main event here, we did, of course, have Rhea Ripley, the women's world heavyweight champion, facing off against Nia Jax. And it was what you expect, right? It was the Rhea show, and as it should be. Rhea had, I think they said like 13 family members right in the front row. And most notably, like her sister, like you could tell, like they are sisters. Like when they showed her family, I was like, oh, that's totally her sister. Like they have the same face. It's the coolest shit. But it was just so fun to see, and because they obviously don't go to Australia much at all. I think this was the first time in what 5 years, and God knows how long prior to then. I think it was like one of the early 2000 shows that they had been since before 5 years ago. So to see them back in Australia and to see her family there and to see how far she's come as a character and how it's warranted and it's not just oh we'll just make you the spotlight because this is your home country type shit like it was earned, like it all made sense. It wasn't forced. Like it just naturally led to last Saturday night, Saturday morning. Um, so I loved it. I loved the atmosphere. I think Nia Jax was amazing in the match, and shout out to Nia. I think this was probably her best match ever. I can't think of another one really that I enjoyed more that Nia was involved in, or at least a one-on-one match. And that's no shade. That's a big thing, and I love the story that they were telling and how they built up to finally Rhea building the strength that we all knew she had. It was just a matter of taking advantage of it and getting the positioning and like outmaneuvering Nia because Nia was dominant and it all made sense. And again, nothing in the match felt forced. But the fact that she actually did get Nia Jax up for the Riptide, and that was the way that she scored the pin. I loved it, I think it was the story was so perfectly built, and I think they went, like, 15 minutes, I think I had it written down here. Yeah, yeah, 15 minutes, so just shy of 15 minutes, and I think that was perfect. I think that was exactly what it needed to be. I think Rhea was the star. I think she got a lot of time after the match was over, like, ringside with the fans and her family and stuff like that, so that was cool. But I think the match obviously was what we expected it to be. I don't think if you put money on Nia winning, I'm so sorry. But again, this was a predictable match that is going now. We're it's taking us to WrestleMania 40 to face off against Becky Lynch, right? I don't know if it's necessarily going to main event night one, depending on what night one ends up looking like. But I think they have a big star with Rhea Ripley, and I don't think obviously that's breaking news or going out on a limb or anything like that. But I love the slow build that they're continuing to do with her. And again, nothing feels forced, and she's finding her own, she's becoming her own, and she's just slowly transcending to the top. And I think her facing off against Becky Lynch at WrestleMania 40 and hopefully needing to beat Becky is just going to solidify that. So I think Rhea is going to be on top for many many months to come. So with that being said, that is the final match on the the Elimination Chamber PLE card here. I was looking to see if they did anything else after that, but it was just Michael Cole just congratulating Rhea Ripley again, and they just showed her with their family members, and that was the final sign off. They did have a lot of travel to Australia packages through the show though as well, which is interesting. It worked, got me wanting to check them out. But thank you guys so much for checking out the review show here. I really appreciate it. We'll be back again sometime this week with an update on Monday Night Raw. If depending on where throughout the week we film, Of course, we'll be talking about Dynamite. This is being advertised. I'm pretty certain, yeah, the 28th is going to be Sting's final appearance as a wrestler. Tony Khan clarified on Twitter as a wrestler. So, and I think it's Will Ospreay's first official Dynamite on the AEW roster, if I'm not mistaken. So, should be a big week coming up. And of course, we'll have The Rock on SmackDown starting off his next 3 week binge on SmackDown. So, we'll be in touch, guys. But again, thank you so much for checking out the show. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a great day.